I am. You're like, I am. And it's like, okay, repeat it now for 50 times. 5 guys are running on the stage. 3 of them have the guns. She was like standing, watching for like a couple of minutes. And then she just did the routine and left. When? Third, what it does. And fourth, in which direction. Try to get used to the fact that when you start learning consciously, you will be behaving a little bit different than the entire group. The most important thing that you need to know about this stage is that you don't need a teacher at all. Hello, my dear guys. My name is Svetlana Rey. I'm a salsa mentor, dancer, psychologist, and also dance teacher's coach. I've been dancing since I was 3 years old, and also I've been teaching salsa for more than 15 years. And I decided to record this podcast for all salsa addicted people to make your way a little bit more joyful and to help you avoid mistakes that many dancers do, and also to bring you as fast as possible to the stage when you're the rock star of every party and enjoy it a lot. Today our topic is how to copy the moves. And unfortunately, this topic has become very important because I think that our dance industry is broken somehow, because imagine if you come to an English lesson and the teacher tells you, okay, hello, this is our first lesson. Please tell me, my name is Svetlana Rey. And you say, my name is Svetlana Rey. And your teacher says, okay, great. And say, I am from Russia. You say, I'm from Russia. And then you start thinking like something is wrong, right? Because we're used to the fact that when we learn, the teachers give us the scheme, the principles of how does the thing that we learn works, right? But in dancing, it all has become very different because the dancing is visual, and the fundamentals which people have to analyze, which teachers have to analyze, they are not being transmitted properly. And even this happens that many teachers are talking about fundamentals, and that would look like you say, okay, my English teacher, I want to learn the fundamentals, and your English teacher says, okay, say I am. You're like, I am. And it's like, okay, repeat it now for 50 times. And that sounds weird, but this is exactly what happens when you learn dancing, unfortunately, in many cases. And then you come to your English teacher after a month and say, teacher, it seems like I'm not actually speaking English. And your teacher says, oh, you just have to train more. And again, it sounds very weird, but this is what's happening when you learn dancing, unfortunately. Because dancing is the art that is visualized, and somehow it has become the thing that the teachers start thinking that you have to copy the moves because they copy the moves by themselves. And the main problem in that is that people are very bad at memorizing images, actually. In order to memorize something, we have to implement more information. That psychologists always say, if you want to memorize something, you have to say, you have to touch it, you have to listen, or you have to give it a name. It has to be much information connected to the topic that you want to memorize. But if it is just an image, then it's very difficult for the people to memorize. In Soviet Union, they made a very cool experiment about witnesses. So there was a lecture at the university, and the teacher was saying, okay, nowadays it's very difficult to trust the witnesses. And there are many mistakes that witnesses actually do because they cannot memorize the things properly. And you can see that the students are like listening properly, kind of falling asleep, and then 5 guys are running on the stage. 3 of them have the guns. And in Soviet Union experiment, there was a pretty decent, so there were just 5 people, 3 guys with the guns. And then 2 guys came to the professor, put a black bag on his head and just carry him away. I heard that there was another version of this experiment when it was totally weird, like 5 people would come and wearing like weird costumes, like one of them was panda, another was wearing like a, carrot costume, they would have guns in their arms, and then the guys would say like some weird things like, hey carrots, keep up your mojitos, and they would kidnap the professor and carry him away. And it all happened in 2 seconds, and then after that, professor appears in the audience and starts asking, okay, how many people you saw? And different people, of course, said different information. One person said, I saw 5 people. Another person said, I saw 3 people. Another person said, I saw there were 7. And they were saying they were wearing the bear costume or they were wearing the rabbit costume. It's like, because our brain has the tendency to create stuff if it doesn't memorize it. And this is what happens. So when you look at the person that is dancing, if you're not gifted, let's say, or if you don't have specific skills to copy the move, you're not able to memorize it well, and you're not able to analyze it well. And that's why dancing, like teaching to dance, requires specific skills to analyze and to realize the movements. But unfortunately, it's not happening. And teachers don't analyze the movements. Teachers cannot explain clearly the movements. That's why students need to learn how to copy the moves, okay? And this is why I am recording this episode of this podcast. I have to tell you that copying the moves, it can be a gift. Some people are really gifted from their birth, like me, for example. I can copy the moves very fast, subconsciously. But most of the people, unfortunately, they cannot copy the moves. And for them, it is difficult unless they realize that this is just a simple skill which they have to obtain, like all the other skills, like doing crossbar delete or something. I remember there was a fun story at Berlin Salsa Congress. My students from Yekaterinburg, from one Russian city, told me about it. They said, we were at the Yamuli class, and Yamuli gather like tons of people, like 100 people or something like this, 200 people, and it was packed. So they said there were a lot of people, and the Yamuli were dancing on the stage. They were given the routine, and they said we started to complain because it was like not clear what they wanted from us. They said we didn't understand the explanations, we didn't understand anything. It was too fast, it was not clear, and they were not happy. But then they said, and then, like 10 minutes before the class ended, we saw Svetlana Ray come into the room. She was like standing, watching for like a couple of minutes, and then she just did the routine and left. And they said, at this moment we realized, okay, the problem is not in Yamuli or in the class. We just need to learn how to copy the moves. So guys, I'm gonna tell you about 4 stages that you will go through while copying the moves. If you're somewhere at the Congress where they don't do good explanations, or if you're not lucky with your teacher and your teacher doesn't explain a thing, or if you're in a very advanced class where teachers normally do not explain much. It all starts with the first stage, which is analysis. You need to analyze the movement. And this is unfortunately the stage that most of the people, they just skip. I don't know why. Students just start to repeat after the teacher. So this is what happens. Teacher wants you to repeat, and students just start repeating, looking at the teacher like boas, like a snake, hypnotizing him and trying to repeat. But the idea is that you need to absorb the logical scheme of the movement. So when we learn the movement, it always starts with 3 images of the movement: the visual image, the auditory image or the logical image, and also the kinesthetic image. So when somebody dances, you need to see what does the movement look like. Also, you need to analyze it or to listen to the explanation. In our case, we admit that there's no explanation, we just need to analyze it. I will tell you how. And you also need to move in order to give your body the understanding of what does this movement feel like when you actually dance it. And on the first stage, you need to gather all these 3 images in your head. So you need to look at your teacher, see how does he move. Then you need to obtain the logical image. And then you need to move by yourself in order to create, I call it movement base. Movement base. To understand actually what do you need to do to execute this movement approximately like your teacher. To create the logical scheme of your movement, you need to get 2 types of keys, movement keys. You have the logical movement keys, and also you have the auditory movement keys. We start with logical movement keys. In order to get them, you need to answer on 4 questions. First, what part of the body? Second, when. Third, what it does. And fourth, in which direction. Okay, so when your teacher dances, you need to analyze it and try to make the scheme, answering the questions. Okay, on one, I do the crossover with the right leg over the left one. On two, I do the tap with the left one to the side, the left leg to the side. On three, I do the kick with the left leg forward, and etc. By the way, if you're a teacher, try to record your explanations and try to hear how many clues, how many keys you're actually missing, because this is one of the exercises that I do at my teacher's training. And I'm always very surprised, and my teachers are always very surprised, seeing how many keys they're missing because they are relying on the image. So they want to show, but they don't name it. And learning how to actually talk and explain all the scheme, it's very important for teachers' work. So we're coming back to the students. Your first task is to actually absorb the scheme from the image that you see. And this is the crucial point which most of the dancers miss. I remember myself being at the class in Bogota like a couple of months ago. There was a class over like a superstar, super champion of the champions, was super advanced level. He gave the routine that was crazy difficult and crazy fast. And he didn't give almost any explanations. So the guys had to absorb the choreo by themselves, and me as well. So I realized that, so he was showing the piece of the choreo, right? And then he would repeat it like for 3 or 4 times. And while repeating it for 3 or 4 times, I noticed that the whole group was following him perfectly. So they were doing it better than me. I sucked because I was actually thinking about, okay, what is the logic of the movement? What actually is happening with my legs and with my arms in this particular case? And I didn't actually understand why these guys are so good, because I mean, I know I have a crazy dance experience, and these people obviously not. So I thought, why they are better than me? It shouldn't be like that, But then at the end of a class, like 10 minutes before the class, I realized what happened. I saw that these guys started to make mistakes. They started to ask questions. They started to confuse the moves. And I was perfectly clear. For me, it was perfectly clear. I was like, understanding what do I need to do on which count, and for me it was important just to repeat it as many times as possible. So I was like one of the few people that made the choreo without any mistake, because I had the scheme in my head. But guys, they were just trying to repeat after the teacher without absorbing this logical scheme, and that's why later on, as they don't have the logical scheme in their head, they started to make mistakes, and there were some questions and something was not clear and all the things. So it's very important in this stage you can dance, but you don't need to copy the movements from your teacher. You don't need to try to repeat the movements from your teacher. You need to try to understand what he's doing and give yourself this logical scheme, which you will be relying on in the future. After making the logical keys, naming, okay, which part of the body on which count, what does, and in which direction, you put the auditory keys on top. Auditory keys, it could be different words or sounds that simply help you to keep up with the choreo. For example, it's all familiar to you when teachers say pam, param, pam, cha-cha, I don't know, spin, slide, chakata, yeah? These are the auditory keys. And unfortunately, some teachers, they believe that they can explain the move with the auditory keys, which is not true, because the explanation has to contain the logical part, right? And auditory keys, you put them on top just to help your brain to memorize the movement. And you can create these auditory keys just for yourself, okay? So after explaining your body and your brain, how is this choreo structured, you need to put the auditory keys on top, marking the steps, like, okay, we do turn, chakata, and all this stuff. And after that, you will have a perfect scheme to work with. And if you're a teacher, this is the stage which you have to go through before the class, okay? So you need to analyze the choreo. You need to make it clear. The logical scheme has to be very clear. And then you need to understand which auditory keys you will put on top to help your students to keep up with the choreo. And with this prepared routine, you go to the class. Perfect. You made the first stage. What is very important in this stage is that when you actually analyze the movement, you will not dance with entire group, because it will very likely happen that you need to stand, watch your teacher, and analyze. It will very likely happen that you need to talk and help yourself with your speech. I will talk about it a little bit later. So try to get used to the fact that when you start learning consciously, you will be behaving a little bit different than the entire group. And it's totally fine. Me as teacher, personally, I respect those kind of students even more, because I know that they're conscious in their way of learning. So you get this scheme, okay? So you watch your teacher, you get the visual image. Then you analyze the movement. You put the logical keys. You know, okay, on which count, which move do you need to do, in which direction, in which part of the body. And then you put the auditory keys on top. So you get the entire scheme of the choreo, and you also move by yourself, so you get the kinesthetic image. So you have the entire movement base of the choreo settled down in your body. What you need to do next is to coordinate. So the next step is coordination. The most important thing that you need to know about this stage is that you don't need a teacher at all, because the coordination is the stage that happens completely within your body, between your brain and your muscles. So your brain has to give the right signals to your muscles to help them to execute the movement correctly and to memorize it correctly. To coordinate, you can use two ways. It's the coordination with the key points and the coordination with logic. It's a little bit tricky for me to explain it here in the audio podcast, but imagine you're going, so you're doing a Nyongo step. You go on one with your right leg forward, and at the same time, your arms are swinging back. On two, you go with your left leg backwards, and at the same time, your arms are swinging forward. So you can memorize the short sequence either on points. It will look like, with the key points, it will look like a set of photo, okay? So the picture number one, you do a step forward with the right leg, your arms are swinging back, memorize it. In the best case, you name it. And then step number two, you go with the left leg backward, your arms are swinging forward. You, again, make a picture, memorize it. This is the key point coordination. And also you can coordinate with the logic. You can observe the movement and try to analyze what kind of logic is there. The logic in Nyongo, for example, is that your arms are doing swinging back and forth on an even count. 1, 3, 5, 7. Always the swinging. And you need the point to start is when you do the step forward, your arms are swinging back. That's it. So 2 points of logic you need to understand, and then you can coordinate. Each way of coordination has pros and cons. If you coordinate with the key points, with the pictures, you make it way faster. It's super fast because you just need to memorize. Pam, 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 5 pictures. You repeat one after another, and you have the move. But if the logic of the movement changes, then you cannot do anything. You have to create new pictures, right? When you coordinate with the logic, it takes more time because you need to understand what exactly is happening, and you need to give your brain the clear instructions. But if the logic changes, it will be easier for you to change the movement. So you can choose, depending on the move, which kind of coordination you would prefer. But I just wanted to let you know that both kinds exist and they are both good. What is important to know about coordination? When your brain has to connect, for example, your legs with your arms, for your brain, it will be always a new move. I don't like it very much when teachers say, okay, if you want, for example, do the basic step and then put the claps on it, you need to automatize the basic so that it's like happens automatically, and you just put the clave on top. This thing actually works very rarely with very gifted, very talented people. In most of the cases, people are not able to do this because simply our brain needs the technical task. What actually I need to do. So if you put your clave on the basic step, your brain has to realize with which step you need to clap, right? And moreover, then when you clap clave, there are some claps that actually don't fit with the step at all. Okay, that's what makes it so difficult for the dancers. And there are very few gifted dancers that can actually make it fast, because subconsciously the brain is given these technical tasks to the muscles very fast. But most of the people unfortunately can't do this. So keep in mind always that when you coordinate, so if you have legs and the arms and you need to coordinate them, in your brain it will be a third movement, totally new, and you need to give your brain clear new instructions on in which moment you need to move together the arms and the legs. The last thing you need to know about coordination is that coordination is the skill. The more you coordinate, the better you coordinate and the faster. It's just the ability of your brain to give the right signals to your muscles. And if you want to improve your coordination, you just need to do more coordination tasks. Like the simple one, when you stroke your belly rounds, and also you hit your head at the same time. This like the very silly, simple coordination movement, but actually if you do it, it will help your brain in the future to coordinate more moves. I wouldn't do it actually by myself. I would do just more dance moves, which help you to coordinate better, but this is just a clear example. And also keep in mind that when you do the move and let's say your brain is not suffering, that means that this movement doesn't develop your coordination anymore. Okay, so your coordination is developing only in the moments when your brain is actually fighting and trying to give the right signals to the right parts of the body. Keep it in mind. So you obtain the logical scheme of the movement base. Then you went in the corner and you coordinated. It's very important to understand that, again, in this stage, when you coordinate, you don't need a teacher, because if you look at your teacher, he or she will in most of the cases only distract you, because teachers, they like to, add emotions and scream some stuff like, okay, come on guys, more energy, do it more sexy or stuff like this, and they will just distract you. Okay, you just need to keep it aside, go to the corner, maybe turn around from the mirror. I do it sometimes. Just coordinate the choreo within your body, and then you can come back and do the last two stages. This is the synchronization and detalization. After you coordinated the movement or the choreo in your body, you come as close as possible to the teacher. Me personally, I always go to the side, from the side, of the group, but on the level of my teacher, like going to the first front line. And you need to dance the choreo with your teacher, trying to synchronize as much as you can. And here you will understand, first of all, you will see whether you obtained the scheme well, okay? Because in the best case, if you did everything great, then you will be dancing pretty much like your teacher in the basics. Not maybe in details, but in the basics. With the counting, with the grooving, with the arms, legs, it will be similar, and this is amazing success. When you synchronize with your teacher, you start observing, because teachers always explain not the whole material, okay? They explain, if they explain, they explain the basics, like steps, arms, whatever, groove, if it is important. But most of the times, teachers dance more than they explain. Teachers like to add some additional grooves or some inclinations or head movements or very subtle arm movements or chest movements on stuff. And when you synchronize with your teacher, understanding the scheme of the movement, then you can distinguish the details. Okay, so you synchronize, you check whether you obtain the logical scheme correctly, and then you go to the detalization stage and you try to detailize the movement and try to understand, okay, here he does a little bit of inclination, that's why we look a little different. Okay, I can add the inclination. Okay, now it's perfect. Again, you synchronize with the teacher. Okay, here he does a little bit deeper groove because he emphasizes one, for example, yeah? You understand it. For now, when you have the logical scheme, you see it better because you can distinguish. It's not like just the whole image of the movement, right? That contains everything together. You can clearly distinguish, okay, this is the scheme of the movement, and these are the details, okay? And for you will find out that it's way more simple to understand the shines, let's say, and small details that your teacher adds to the movement. And then you just simply add them on top if you can, or if you can't, then it will be easier for you to distinguish it and to say, okay, this wave I can add. For example, but this crazy afro wave with the chest that my teacher does, for me it's too much. I cannot do it right now. And I go after the class, lock myself in the room for 1 hour, and I do this wave. And in the next class, I can do it with my teacher. See, it becomes a little bit different, right? So instead of getting frustrated, like, okay, I didn't get the choreo, or having the feeling like, okay, I got something, but I actually didn't understand what exactly did I get. You have clear imagination of, okay, I got the basics. I was able to keep up with my teacher, with the tempo, with all of the steps and the arms, for example, and I even added some details. Do you see how different is the perception of the movement? And this way of learning also will help your self-esteem to grow and to become more strong, because you understand what you actually did well and you will see clearly what you actually need to develop. And this is like when your brain sees it as a clear task, it's easy. And you think like, okay, I do it next time and you will see how I change. Instead of having this very blurry, imagination of, okay, it was a cool routine, I did something and I think it was not bad, but I don't know. There was a very cool example when I had a show group with my girls in Russia. I used to have it, and we did a show. It was a Carl Flores choreo, and we had like a band, a group that was divided between two cities. Some part of the girls were learning with another teacher in another city, and some part of the girls were learning with me in St. Petersburg. And we only met before the show in Moscow. And I noticed, first of all, that my girls are actually more precise in doing the moves, because they realized in which moment, in which sound, they have to do which particular moves. And the difference was very clear. I mean, at least for me. What was even more surprising is that after 4 months, we decided to make the show again. Can you imagine 4 months, no dancing at all, the show? And then we gathered all together, and I was so shocked seeing that my girls, they were able to revive the choreo in their bodies in like 10 minutes. So we just had to repeat it like 1 or 2 times, and they made it perfectly in perfect synchron. That was for me the craziest part. They were synchronized like hell, just because they were synchronized by the logical scheme of the movement. Now I hope that you understand how does it work. The last and the very important thing that you need to know is that your speech is a cheat code, a mechanism that will help you to learn faster in all the cases. In Russia, they made a very cool experiment about inner speech. You know that we all have the inner speech. When we are faced with a task, we support our thoughts with the speech, which is actually not visible, but it exists. And the experiment looked like this. So the guy gathered people and divided them into 2 groups and gave them just the tasks, like riddles or something like this. And one group was just solving the riddles, and another group had to do the same, but with the stick in their teeth. So they were holding the stick in their teeth that was blocking the inner speech. And of course, you can assume that the group that was holding the stick were making the task worse, because this inner speech was depressed. So when we are faced with some difficult task, our speech always comes to help us, and you need to use it. Please use it. When I am at my classes and I see my students counting by themselves, even whispering, I am always very, very happy. I know that some of the people may look at these people and think like, oh, that's a weirdo. Why is he counting? But actually this weirdo is doing very cool thing, because he will learn faster. And this weirdo, after a few months, maybe will be like way better than others, right? Because he was just using his brain in the way how it should be used. So speech is the thing that will help you in all the stages, okay? When you analyze the movement, talk, say, okay, right like here, turn, slide, hip, arm. Help yourself with the speech, even if it is not like a full sentence, just the word, but help it, let it happen, and pronounce it. Whisper or talk loud or scream, whatever, helps you, use it. It's important. When you coordinate as well, you use either the auditory case, like pam, 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 or the movement, like, okay, bend, straighten, slide, sit, salto, split, whatever. Help yourself. Also, I want you to now to understand that when you will start using these rules, you will be looking totally different from all the other people. And you need to realize it. Okay, when I now I'm in Colombia and I've been learning salsa like for more than 2 months at the normal group classes. I've come back to the group classes, which I already forgot about for many years because I was mostly teaching. And I can see that I really look like weird because sometimes I just go in the corner by myself, do some stuff. Sometimes the teacher says, okay, we do all together. And I just stop and look at the teacher. And I can see sometimes that the teacher's like, what the hell is happening, But I clearly understand what's happening in my head and clearly understand what I need. And that helps me a lot to learn faster, okay? And I hope that this advice will help you too. Okay, guys, so please share your insights in the comments or in the Instagram stories. Tag me. I hope that this material was very helpful and you enjoyed it a lot. Please implement it in the next classes and share your impressions. Good luck, guys.